Hey everybody, Mr. Regan here, and we're looking at the last question here in our review that has us looking at this table where we compare these three species from our diagram and the body structures that we see. So looking at the diagram, we got to ask ourselves, what is the information about these structures that we see tell us about the ancestors of these species? So thinking about the ancestors, thinking about the structures, we see that the hagfish has a backbone, a suction mouth with no limbs and no bones in its body. We see the great white has a backbone, jaws, and limbs, and some bones, but no ear bones. And we see that the salmon has a backbone, it has jaws and limbs, and it has ear bones. So, thinking about what does this information about these structures tell us about their ancestor species, let's take a look at our options. All three species share an ancestor population, but sharks and salmons, these two, have a more recent ancestor population. This is why neither share the mouth structure. So we see here that they don't have that suction mouth structure for feeding, they use jaws. Option two, the shark and salmon are more related to one another, but they're not related to the hagfish because they don't have that suction mouth for feeding. So we know these two have a common ancestor and are more related, but they do not share a common ancestry with the hagfish. Option three, without the common ancestor, we cannot infer about it for any of these three species. So unless we have it, we can't say one way or the other. So take a second, think about the question, think about the table, pick the best answer, and unpause the video to go over it. All right, I think we got it. Let's take a look. We know that when two species share a structure that is not shared with a third. So these two species, the shark and the salmon, share that jaw and limbs set of structures. This is evidence that these two species are more closely related than the third. We know they all have a common ancestor. So option three doesn't make sense. We know they share a common ancestor. We know these two are more related because they share not only the backbone, which is shared by all three, but the jaws and limbs, which our hagfish doesn't. Even though they don't have the same structures in terms of bones in their body, the fact that they have a shared backbone and that shared jaws and limbs tells us that the answer number one is the best choice. So take a second. If you got any questions, reach out. Otherwise, you're all done.